So, welcome everybody to this session on situational judgment tests. I'm Michael, your trustee pre-health advisor. And remember, on this, as well as anything else, you can always reach out to me at that email address. And we're going to get started. Situational judgment tests are remotely administered and monitored tests designed to measure your professional readiness with a special concentration on a few things: your ability to problem solve, your ability to exercise empathy, your ethical responsibility to yourself and others, your interpersonal skills, as well as your competency in teamwork and collaboration. And schools use situational judgment tests in any number of different ways. They might use them to decide who advances from the application to the interview phase, as well as at any point after that to discern between comparably ranked applicants. How many of them are there and who administers them? There are two. There is the CASPer and Preview. CASPer is the only test in physician assistant world, but you also see it in some osteopathic medicine programs, and some medical schools will also use it as a substitute for the Preview. Like the Preview, it is administered by a third-party provider. Preview is exclusively medical school world, and it's administered on behalf of the AAMC, the same organization that manages the MCAT and primary applications. Do you have to take either one? And the short answer is no. The longer answer is probably. So the vast majority of schools in allopathic, osteopathic medicine, physician assistant, and dentistry do not require the CASPer or Preview. But some schools will recommend it, and when they use the language recommended but not required, it's generally in your interest to read that as required. It is possible to build a solid list of schools that don't require a test. You can totally do it that way. But planning on taking one or both of them will give you flexibility in your application portfolio, the range of schools that you can apply to. And preparing for these situational judgment tests arguably helps you prepare for interviews. Situational judgment tests and interviews often probe the same qualities in people. So which schools require or recommend a test, and when do they require it? It is a total mess. The population of programs that require or recommend a situational judgment test is different each year. It is your responsibility to investigate and track the schools that have this requirement or recommendation. Some schools will require you to complete the test before your primary application. Some require it for the secondary application, which usually comes in the late summer. Some will require it around interview time. In order to give you the kind of flexibility that you'll enjoy, if you're going to take one of these situational judgment tests, completing it in the month of May is a good idea. How do you figure out which one is required where? An internet search is a good starting point. Something like Google. Please avoid social media. It is not reliable. When you use an internet search, my wish for everyone is that they stick to results from pages run by test prep or admissions coaching and consulting services, as opposed to freelance individuals. So these companies, Successful Match, Shemasian Consulting, Med School Insider, and BMO Consulting, are the ones that I trust, and I encourage you to trust as well. It is your job to track via the websites of programs that you're considering. So in this presentation, which you'll have in the notes for this presentation, you have Midwestern University, for an example, as well as Medical College of Wisconsin. And you can explore the language that they use to indicate that a situational judgment test is required or recommended. Here is a list. This is not exhaustive. This is just programs that St. Thomas students and alumni commonly apply to. So I would say the majority of people who apply to medical school apply to at least one of those schools. Des Moines University and University of Wisconsin, as well as Mayo Clinic, are very common destinations for St. Thomas people. A few people have gone to St. Louis University over the years. There is a population of medical schools that will be okay with the CASPer. For instance, Des Moines University will accept the CASPer rather than the preview. But Rush University, Medical College of Wisconsin, and University of Colorado have taken in a number of St. Thomas people over the years, especially Medical College of Wisconsin. In physician assistant world, Marquette, Midwestern, Rush University, and University of Wisconsin-Madison are very common destinations for St. Thomas people, and they basically require the CASPer. The CASPer is very rare in dental school world. If you're a pre-dental student listening to this presentation and you're not applying or plan to apply to Indiana University or Case Western University, you can basically stop the presentation. It's very rare in the world of dental school applications. So we're going to start with the CASPer. We're going to dive right in. The CASPer tests these competencies: your ability to collaborate, to communicate, to exercise empathy, to exercise fairness, to ethically reason, to keep yourself motivated and help others stay motivated, your ability to problem solve, your qualities of resilience and self-awareness. That's the ultimate goal, to assess those competencies. So like I said, CASPer is administered by a third party called Acuity Insights. There's a link to their page in this presentation. And here is how they describe the CASPer. The CASPer is an online open response situational judgment test. It asks what you would do in a tough situation, and more importantly, why. This helps determine behavioral tendencies of applicants pursuing people-centered professions. It consists of video and text responses that are remotely proctored. I'll talk a bit about what that means, to 14 different scenarios. It takes about 90 minutes from start to finish. It costs $85 just to take the exam once, plus $18 for each school to which scores are reported. And like many of these companies, they do offer fee assistance. There's a link to their video on the CASPer in this presentation. When it comes time for you to do the CASPer, you need a quiet place with robust internet connection. You can ask me about space here in Murray Herrick, where I am, in the career development suite. Just email me and I'll be happy to facilitate that for you. So the CASPer consists of 6 video responses where you are filmed remotely responding to a prompt on camera. After those 6 video responses, you get a 10-minute break. Then you are asked to respond by typing in language in response to 4 different prompts, and then a 5-minute break, and then another set of typed responses. And in each of these, this is true for the CASPer as well as the preview, your task is to speak not as yourself today, but as a medical, dental, or PA student imagined in the future. So speaking as you will speak once you are admitted. So I'm going to play for you One of the consulting companies' excellent material on a sample CASPer prompt for a video response. So this is what's known as a scenario or situation question. As you'll hear in the video in a bit, you are an observer standing in a hallway. Two men make what sound like inappropriate comments to women at your college. The women look uncomfortable after the interaction. And like many of these prompts, it reads, what would you do or say in this situation? And as the consultant will lay out for you, you only have 1 minute, which is very, very little time. You're not going to provide an exhaustive response. You simply can't in 1 minute. But it's important that you hit these four very important things. One, you must identify the most pressing issue and or in these situation questions, the most vulnerable person in the scenario. It's important that you describe not exactly what you would do, but how you would gather more information. That's very important. In most of these responses, you will identify the best case to the worst case of what you learn when you gather more information and suggest 2 or 3 proposed solutions formulated as if-then statements. If I learn this about what, for instance, the intentions of the men were or their mindset, then I do this. So here we go. We're going to, this entire video is linked in the presentation. We're going to skip to 3 minutes and 22 seconds.
Do you have an upcoming CASPer? So once we put all of this together, let's see what an expert response would look like to the what would you do or say in this situation question. In this situation, I'm most concerned about the women who were on the receiving end of some potentially harmful comments. The first thing I would do is to make sure that they're okay. Additionally, I would also ask them if they were okay if myself, being just a bystander in this situation, is okay with me stepping into the situation to help resolve it. If they agreed, then I would reach out to the men to get a better idea of what their intentions were behind their comments. If they were not intending to be derogatory with their comments, I would explain how hurtful they can come across as and ask them to apologize to the women. If they were intending to be derogatory with their comments, but they were remorseful after the fact once I called them out on their behavior, I would once again ask them to apologize to the women and ensure that their behavior is in check going forward. If they were intending to be derogatory with their comments and they were not remorseful, I would escalate this further to either a dean or a guidance counselor to take further disciplinary actions, as I am just a bystander in this case. So there was our sample expert response to the what would you do in this situation question. The reason it was so great is because it followed our recommended structure, and I'll get into the specifics on that later. But I also want to point out that the expert did a great job at identifying their role in the situation. So you noted in the prompt, just a reminder, you were a bystander in the situation. So how you go about responding to certain prompts and certain scenarios will depend on who you are in the scenario. The expert recognized that they were a bystander and made sure to reach out to the women in this scenario and make sure that they were okay with this bystander getting involved before taking any steps further. This really shows the evaluators of your CASPer exam that you are taking the time to really understand your role and the impacts that you might have on it. This really shows your maturity and your problem-solving nature. Once that has been identified, like I said, this response met and checked all the boxes of our scenario structure. The first thing they did was identify the most pressing issue or the most vulnerable party. In this case, their main concern was the women and their well-being, given the fact that they may have been on the receiving end of some inappropriate comments. Next, they gathered information. So they did a really great job here by one, going to find out what the intentions were of the men, because again, we don't always want to assume the worst and assume that their intentions were being inappropriate. So the expert went and said that they would speak to the men. And then also, as part of the gathering information and identifying the role portion of it, the expert reached out to the women and said that they would only step into this situation as a bystander if the women gave them the okay to do so. Then, based on the information gathered, so in this case, the main piece of information was the intentions behind those comments, the expert provided three solutions based on the information gathered. So the solution, best case scenario, they weren't intending to be inappropriate with their comments, and they were asked to apologize. That's the best case scenario. That's everything being wrapped up in a nice little bow. Of course, that is not how the world works. So the expert continued to move through some additional responses. So the second one, the middle ground, is when, yes, they were intending to be inappropriate with their comments. However, they're willing to apologize and the girls are okay with the situation going forward. Worst case scenario, of course, is they were intending to be inappropriate and they are not going to apologize for the inappropriate and perhaps hurtful comments to the women. And this is where the expert identifies their role once again, the fact that they are a bystander, so they would bring in a third party in this case. The prompt, as you remember, was set in a college, so they said they would reach out to the dean for further disciplinary action. Now that we've tackled these scenarios.
So I think that's a very good walkthrough of the basic structure of a scenario or situation question. Again, identifying the most pressing issue or the most vulnerable person, describing how you in the situation would gather more information, arranging that information along best case to worst case, and suggesting 2 or 3 proposed solutions as if-then statements. Now we're going to talk about a separate genre of questions in these situational judgment tests that are really more personal in nature. And so the situation is not hypothetical, but actual. And the priorities in formulating a response are more or less the same. Your job is to be specific about the situation or event that you're recalling, to emphasize how you grew personally, and also to describe what you took away from the situation into later similar situations. The goal being to demonstrate your ability to problem solve, your empathy for the people involved, including yourself, your ability to ethically reason through it, as well as your development of self-awareness. So we're going to play this video again and fast forward to about 10 minutes.
Reach out to the women, apologize, and failure. Want to on women, both on the receiving end of these comments and women in general. He was very receptive to my comments and was not aware of the impact that his comments could have. Going forward, I will make sure to always call out people when they friend was when I was with a male friend of mine and he catcalled 2 women. A time when I had to speak out against my friend was when I was with a male friend of mine and he catcalled 2 women in front of me. This was very hurtful as a woman myself, but I did not let my emotions get the better of me, and I had a non-judgmental conversation with him and let him know the impact of these words on women, both on the receiving end of these comments and women in general. He was very receptive to my comments and was not aware of the impact that his comments could have. Going forward, I will make sure to always call out people when they have behavior such as this, even if it is a friend or even if it could cause an awkward conversation, to ensure that everyone is receiving the same level of respect. This is a lesson that I will carry forward with me in my future career as a physician to ensure that every patient, colleague, or superior is kept in check and ensuring that everyone upholds their integrity and respect, no matter who you are.
So this is very common in situational judgment tests. You will be called on to narrate or describe an ethical dilemma that you have faced. In this instance, a time when a friend, colleague, or superior did something that was really inappropriate. And it can sometimes be difficult to identify ethical dilemmas in your memory, but I promise you, you have been a participant or a witness in one of them. Sorry. So in addition to video responses, there are a number like a total of 8 typed responses where you are given a scenario. In this case, in the example that we'll watch, you observe someone cheating on an exam. And in response to that situation, you're given 4 prompts, excuse me, in this case, 3 prompts. What would you do in this situation? And then some qualifiers. If you knew your classmate's neighbor knowingly let them cheat, how would that change how you respond? If you were the professor and learned that your students have been caught cheating, what would you do? And like with the video responses, the important task is to identify what's in play, identify the ethical obligations that you as the observer face, and identify any conflicts between your obligations in that scenario. Describe, importantly, how you would gather more information. And the exercise of empathy is, in all of these scenarios, very, very important. And like with the video scenarios, you're identifying the best case to the worst case, and you're suggesting 2 or 3 proposed solutions as if-then statements. So we're going to watch this at about the 6-minute mark.
Today, we're going to talk about strategies to prepare for the answer the questions. As soon as the time goes off, stop typing immediately. Then continue playing this video to see how your answer compares with ours. Have you identified the same ethical and professional issues? Don't expect our answers to perfectly match. This exercise is meant to help you get better at recognizing the key components in each scenario. All right, let's go. Do you see that? What? 2 rows down. I think Lawrence is cheating. I can't believe it. He totally is. I can see him looking off Sarah's exam and copying her answers. Well, this is the hardest class of the year. He's probably worried about keeping his grades up for med school applications. Yeah, but this is anatomy. Shouldn't we actually know this material if we're going to be doctors? I mean, I sure think so, but I don't know if I want to get involved with Lawrence's business. What about you? What do you think we should do? What about you? What do you think we should do?
Sorry, that was a little bit of theatrical setup. The actual prompts on the CASPer are literally just the ones that you see in the right column where the situation is described and the questions are posed.
Question number 1, what will you do in this situation? Question number 2, imagine you knew the neighbor was knowingly letting your classmate cheat. How would that change your answer? If you were the professor and learned your students had been caught cheating, what would your actions be? Pause the video and start your timer now. How did it go? 5 minutes isn't much time, is it? All right, let's look at the key issues presented in this scenario. First, as a pre-med student, you have a duty to uphold the integrity of the medical profession. Doctors should hold themselves to high ethical standards and refuse to take unethical shortcuts. You can't ignore this behavior in someone trying to become a physician. Second, you have a duty to show loyalty and compassion for your classmates, encouraging their personal and moral growth. So, how do you balance these conflicting responsibilities? Before we give you our answers, let's go over the qualities you should demonstrate in your responses. What do you think they should be? We find it important to show commitment to medical ethics as well as empathy towards your classmate. You want to display your professionalism in how you approach this tricky situation. And you'll want to prove your ability to balance multiple perspectives. Now let's look at our answers. Question number 1, what would you do in this situation? Here's what we would have heard. After the exam ends, I would pull my classmate aside and speak with him in private. I would let him know I saw him cheating on the test and intended to inform the professor. But I changed my mind and want to give him the chance to come forward first and admit to the professor he cheated. If my classmate was willing to confess to cheating but was worried about the resulting sanctions, I would offer to help him prepare to plead his case before the academic conduct committee. I would support him in composing and rehearsing a statement and apology. Regardless of the outcome and what sanctions are administered, I would remind him of the importance of honesty and choosing the moral path. What was your response? Did you demonstrate empathy, commitment to ethics, or professionalism? Pause the video to compare our response with your response and think what you wish you could add or subtract to your answer in hindsight.
One of the things this video touches on that I think is very important, that comes up again and again in interview preparation as well, and that's that whatever your response to this scenario or another scenario or anything that comes up in interviews, you should always start from empathy. So a possible response to this scenario is you walk straight to the professor, point at the person who was doing the cheating and say that person was cheating and walk away. But the response that you saw here, I think, was very good in that it signaled empathy for the person who was doing the cheating, for the person who was acting very unethically. Because as we know, we are imperfect beings. We do not always act with integrity. Sometimes that's because of very big life events are happening. So whatever your response in scenario questions, start from empathy. The CASPer also figures the written response to the same word-based or personal sorts of questions that we saw in the video response. So this is a 5-minute typed response to an aphorism like you see here, or sometimes a question about your past. So in this example, you're presented with a quote that observation, reason, human understanding, courage, these make the physician. And you're presented with the 3 prompts that you see here below. And it's worth emphasizing again, your job is to answer them as the future medical student you will be. What does this quote mean to you? Discuss the importance of courage in medicine. Describe a time in your life when you had to make a courageous decision. What did you learn from the experience? And a couple of guidelines for from the response that we'll view. It's important to be as concrete as you can, to reflect on things you've seen and experienced. And it's important to stick with positives. You might have occasion to go into more difficult parts of your story, into the more kind of nuanced and very depth-focused responses that you might have to prompts like this. But for the CASPer, for the 5 minutes that you will have to type in your responses, it's important to stick with the positives. Stick to things that will reflect well on you. So we're going to watch this at about the 8-minute mark.
Today, we're going to talk about strategies to prepare for conflict, your ability to balance multiple perspectives. Now let's look at our answers. Question number 1, what would you do in this situation? Here's what we would have written. After the exam ends, I would pull my classmate aside and speak with him in private. I would look through on his responsibilities. Would this change your reaction? Quote about being a physician.
There we go. This is it.
We want to give you an example of a word-based scenario. You'll likely come across a single quote as the source for one of your CASPer sections, given without context. Some students actually find these harder to answer since you're not giving characters or a narrative to respond to. So let's give it a try. Observation, reason, human understanding, courage. These make the physician. Martin H. Fisher. Question number 1. What does this quote mean to you? Question number 2. Discuss the importance of courage in medicine. Question number 3. Describe a time in your life when you had to make a courageous decision. What did you learn from the experience? Pause the video and spend 5 minutes answering these questions. This scenario is quite different from the others. How did you do? Did you find it harder or easier? These questions allow you to get personal and share your experience in the medical field, whether it was from working, volunteering, shadowing, or being a patient yourself. Since these questions are more subjective, the important thing here is to demonstrate your understanding of a physician's role and what it takes to be an excellent doctor. Question number 1. What does this quote mean to you? Here's our response. This quote reminds me that being a doctor requires more than knowledge and logic. We learn to observe symptoms and use reason to make diagnoses. But that's only half the work. We need to build relationships with patients based on human understanding so they trust us when we recommend a medical course of action. And we need the courage to act morally and ethically when situations become ambiguous or difficult. A physician missing any one of these traits would be ineffective. This quote will mean something slightly different to everyone. How does your answer address the quote and represent the role of a physician? Pause the video to consider your response. Our answer highlights the importance of compassion, empathy, and ethics for a physician. Remember, these are a few of the primary qualities the CASPer test is measuring, so you want to take every opportunity to include them in your answers. Question number 2. Discuss the importance of courage in medicine. Here's our response. A physician's courage is called upon every day. It takes courage to inform a patient or their family of bad news. It takes courage to answer hard questions with honesty. Courage is needed when performing a difficult or new procedure. It's courageous to adhere to ethical standards when it means questioning an unjust organizational policy. Every medical professional I know regularly displays courage through their actions. Pause the video to review your response compared to others. This answer uses specific examples to show familiarity with a physician's role. You want to call upon your experiences and interactions with doctors when responding to this type of question. Which physicians do you look up to? How do they show courage? There's the material for your answer. Question number 3. Describe a time in your life when you had to make a courageous decision. What did you learn from the experience? Here's our response. My parents and I did not see eye to eye on which college I should attend. I had my heart set on an out-of-state school with a strong science program, but they wanted me to stay closer to home. We had many difficult conversations where I listened to their concerns and tried to calm their fears. Eventually, they left the decision to me. While I respected their input, I chose the out-of-state school because it offered stronger pre-med options. It was hard to go against my parents' wishes, but I knew it was the right choice, and I learned to trust my instincts. What qualities did you demonstrate in your story? Pause the video to identify them. It can be hard to think of a personal story on the spot, but the CASPer does like to ask these describe a time in your life questions. Be mindful when choosing your story that you don't reveal anything that puts you in a negative light. For example, don't use a story showing you handling stress poorly or struggling to work with others. These qualities would be concerning in a future physician. On the other hand, demonstrating strong communication skills and your desire to understand another person's perspective is always a strong approach.
So I think that's worth emphasizing that your job is to be concrete, to reflect on things that you've seen and experienced whenever it comes to a prompt that asks you to reflect on very abstract things, like what makes a physician, and then also zeroing in on experiences of your own. So the entire video is linked in this presentation and as well as the video notes. So what happens after you complete the CASPer? Your responses are rated by independent human evaluators, a different set of evaluators for each question. They are trained to keep an open mind on the content of response. There simply are no right or wrong answers. That's worth emphasizing. There are no right or wrong answers, just gradations of performance along the following lines, using examples and illustrations as much as possible, identifying and interpreting social dilemmas in nuanced ways, forming and justifying a response along sound, ethical, and interpersonal lines, applying critical thinking, and occasional creativity in your problem solving. You don't have to be creative all the time, but letting your ability to creatively problem solve now and then will go a long way. Your ability to carefully consider multiple perspectives. And it's worth emphasizing that in addition to not looking for right or wrong responses per se, the raters are also trained to ignore spelling and grammar mistakes. If you have an accent from another part of the world, they're trained to ignore that. They're also trained to, they're also trained to ignore local dialects, as well as the occasional incomplete thought or sentence. And once your responses have been evaluated, you'll get a score within 4 weeks that will rate you, compare you to other test takers in your year on a scale of 1 to 100. And the schools that you apply to that either require or recommend the CASPer will get both your raw score as well as the quartile within which you placed. Lowest 25%, low middle 25%, high middle 25%, and top 25%. There is no dress code for the CASPer, which is handy, but you'll probably do better if you dress professionally. This is important. Your webcam and microphone must remain online at all times, even during breaks. You have to stay at your computer during the break. Interruptions will likely require you to register for another test date. And there are some things that you can actually do to prepare for the CASPer, including some relatively fun and liberating facial and vocal exercises, which I'll play for you.
Hi, I'm Greg Justice from the Department of Theater and Cinema. I do workshops all over the country on improving communication effectiveness. Part of it is warming up your voice. Let's go. Big face. Little face. Big face. Little left, right, up, down. Now, yawn. Yawn again. We speak with our lips. Warm them up. Use our tongue for articulation. No. If you got tension in your neck, head rolls. Yeah. Other way. Yeah. Don't forget your articulators. Backwards. And then finish with tongue twisters. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Pecker picked peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many peppers? Peter Piper picked. That's how you start warming up your voice.
That is about the silliest thing you will ever do. You'll probably want to make sure you're in a private space, but you will be grateful when you do these things before the CASPer. There are also some activities you can use to practice and build your confidence. You don't have to do all of them. The only thing you have to do is pick the smallest, most manageable one, then move on to another and then another. So one exercise is to record yourself talking about what you did last summer. Ideally, you would do this in the space of a minute, just like the CASPer. And then you watch your recording of yourself and rate yourself, and maybe have a trusted friend rate you for your rate of speech. 1 would be way too fast. 5 would be ideal. How audible are you from the volume of your voice? 1 would be very difficult to hear. 5 would be ideal. How good is your articulation? Is it easy to follow along based on the sounds that you make? 1 would be mumbling, and 5 would be ideal. How confident do you come across? 1 would be terribly unconfident, and 5 would be ideal. How much contact do you make with the camera? And yes, you will need to look directly into the camera. I'm not doing that because I'm doing a presentation, but you look into the camera as often as you possibly can. And how comprehensive is your response? 1 is really not comprehensive at all, very superficial. 5 is ideal. So you rate yourself, you get somebody else to rate you, and practice talking about the same topic, or let's say another easy topic like what you did over the weekend. Practice that a few times. Then try out one of the prompts that we've had in this presentation rehearse it a few times and then move on to another. And what's very, very important is that you celebrate small gains. They will be small. Nobody is born knowing how to do this stuff. People who are good at it get good by practicing. And in the presentation, you'll find links to more prompts that you can practice. It's important to not try to craft a master preparation strategy, something that is comprehensive and all-encompassing, at least to start. Your preparation is going to benefit if you start with something small, even if you then move on to create a big all-encompassing preparation strategy. It will be easier if you do some small manageable things first. So Acuity, the company that runs the CASPer, offers a free practice test, which is nice. It is not scored, which is not nice. And my advice is that you do your one practice test in the same place that you intend to take the real test. Again, this should be a quiet place with a robust internet connection. And ask me about the space here in the Career Suite. Just send me an email. All right, that covers the CASPer. Please tune in for the following episode if you are also going to do the preview. Thanks everybody for listening, and I hope it was helpful.